So this story is very interesting. I don't want to spoil anything, but be sure to listen to the end of the story. It literally had me laughing hysterically. Let's throw a log onto the fire. This was a while ago and takes place in a neighborhood in an American city. I hadn't played in-person D&D for a long time, so I was excited when a casual friend, Guy, said that he wanted to start a campaign. He said he'd even DM, which is amazing because I'm always the designated forever GM. I didn't know Guy all that well as a person, but we had known each other as gamers for years. We had met at a bunch of local board game events and both enjoyed playing longer niche 4X kind of games. So I said, sure, how often do you get an invite to an in-person D&D campaign out of nowhere? The day of the first session came, and I show up to his house with my dice and a pretty basic character that I had made. There were 2 other players there when I arrived. One normal person, Norma, and one very odd person, Waldo. Guy has clearly prepared a lot of material. I'm surprised. He's not the most responsible person and plays most games pretty fast and loose. But here, he's got a little folder with maps and realm history and all that. So cool. Waldo just has this 1,000-yard stare. But okay, whatever, I'm still psyched. I should add at this point that I knew Norma very well. He was a close friend, but I had never seen Waldo before. I figured he was from the board game meetup group. Spoiler, he wasn't. Waldo didn't talk much, but I figured he was just socially awkward. That was true of a lot of people at the board game group meetups, but a lot of them were still nice people. Guy pulls out a big hand-drawn map and starts explaining the kingdoms. Norma and I take notes. So impressed. Waldo just stares blankly. Guy gets to our kingdom. And this is where you guys start. You're part of the Orc Kingdom. Cool. It's not an evil campaign, so Guy must have some interesting stuff in mind here. I think. Like, maybe the orcs are good aligned for once. Or maybe they're beyond alignments and live in complicated, ethically gray societies. We're level 1 elves and humans and stuff, so it's not like we're going to fight our way out. It would be impossible for some level 1 lackeys to escape this gigantic empire he has just laid out. I can't emphasize enough that this all seemed way beyond the level of creativity and foresight that I had ever seen from Guy in any of the 4X games we had played. And having been out of the hobby for so long, I was more than ready to jump into whatever this world was. So the Orc Empire is an evil empire. Oh. Okay, disappointing, not gonna lie. But we're not evil, right? Right. There's people from every background in this empire. They're all slaves to the orcs. Wait, so we're playing as slaves? Yeah, because the orcs have a problem. Waldo stares into space. They can't have babies. Huh? Yeah, the orcs can't have babies. Well, not all orcs, the women. The female orcs can't have babies, so they capture slaves from all around the world and bring them here. Then the male orcs forcibly breed with them and... Wait, they what? The Orc Emperor has breeding laws where all the male orcs have to snuggle struggle all the slaves to keep the empire going. Guy, we're not playing a game about forceful breeding. They what? Breeding laws? What? Waldo continues staring. It's okay, because you get to forcefully breed with other people too. Guy, we are not playing that game. We get to, what? No. What Norma said, we're not playing some forceful breeding game. Waldo is still staring. Then there were several moments of very awkward silence. Fine, there's no forceful breeding, but there's still an evil empire that has lots of slaves. You're in a prison and need to escape. What followed was an hour of a generic dungeon crawl where we get to beat up a couple of orc guards in a weird underground prison, and then we politely said we had to go. Waldo barely spoke the whole time and didn't say goodbye when he left. Norma and I stuck around after to say goodbye to Guy. Norma and I had both, of course, already realized that signing up for this game had been a terrible mistake, but we had known Guy for years, and it was hard seeing him like this. He had a wife and kids that we had met. He was well liked in the board game group, and it just honestly was all a lot and very confusing. We didn't want to just storm out. Even if we did, already knew we'd never come back. Thanks again for hosting. Waldo seemed a bit off. Is he okay? Oh, I don't know. He's pretty weird. Does he like 4X games? I don't know. I just met him. Just met him? Isn't he from the board game group? No, I just met him today. Just like on the street? No, I posted an ad online to ask for players. And you just invited him to your house? Yeah, he's a little bit weird though. I don't know why he brought a gun. He had a gun? Yeah, he was showing it to me before you got here. I don't know if I'm gonna invite him back again. He was pretty weird. Norma and I took a long break from tabletop RPGs after that. I'm glad to say that we still play together. We never saw Waldo again, and we haven't heard from Guy in years. I now require all new players to agree to our table's 2 no exception rules before any new campaign. No forceful breeding in the game, and no real weapons at the table. This story is just so interesting. It's a little weird typical horror story, but the surprise twist at the end is kind of interesting because when you go back through the story, it feels a bit different. I really wonder what Waldo's motives were, and I'm wondering what he was thinking during this entire horror story. Also, for those of you who are possibly worried about Guy's disappearance, he is still active on social media, so I think he is safe from Waldo. Make sure to jot down your comments on this story as we jump into the next. For this next story, one guy basically wants to do some of the most evil things possible all in one session, starting with a magical intimacy doll. Let's just throw that doll onto the fire. While in college, I joined the D&D club and ended up finding my current group. We've been playing for about 4 years now, and while the core group, DM and 3 main players, has remained the same, we had a period of time with something of a revolving door going on with other players. This incident occurred about 2 years ago, and while most of these notes occurred within one session, his final one, I believe he was around for 2 or 3. Now, we do have some raunchy humor in our group, but he took it a bit too far. Wizard was of the enchantment school, I think. For some reason, he began discussing making a magical intimacy doll out of both inanimate objects and corpses. The implication being that he wanted it to be conscious, but unable to move or object. Some other notes I found imply that he was actually hoping to learn true polymorph and transform actual people into this magical intimacy doll. At some point, I recall him making a remark that my character was too old for his taste. My warlock was 20 at the time. Also, apparently 18 was also too old. Now there was a massive war going on between the elven capital and the nation our rogue was from, and so we were planning to sabotage the war efforts. Somehow this turned from political espionage to the wizard deciding that clearly genocide was the best option. Specifically, something similar to the Holocaust, involving putting elves into camps and gassing them. Later, we were joking about the rogue being possibly related to an elven ambassador. He wasn't, or my character having hooked up with one. She didn't, to give us a connection to the people in power so we could get in. Apparently, the logical escalation to that was him asking if his character had snuggled with any elves. I can't get that term out of my head, and I will forever hate him for bringing it up. Took us a few moments to register what he even meant. When we called him out on it, he decides that he wants to make a new version of his character. He wants to do this by having a weird alternate timeline version of himself pop out, kill his current character, and take his place. Admittedly, this was a funny bit, discussing an alternate world where all our characters were lawful good, since we very much were not, and had an ideal outcome to their story. He promptly ruined it by having this new character be as Puritan as he could be, and immediately complained about his god being female. My warlock finds out that an entity that has been harassing the party for the majority of the campaign is killing off her family from the youngest upward, with a countdown between each one that she can only see in a journal she was given by a disguised minion. In the midst of her panic that her pregnant sister has apparently been tortured into having a magical miscarriage, he suggests her harlot sister just start popping out more kids to keep the rest of the family safe. He insistently called literally everyone sinners for the slightest transgression and interrupted to do so. By far the pettiest passive aggression I've ever seen. After the session, there was a private discussion with the rest of the group and the DM about the player and how his behavior was negatively affecting the campaign. Our other revolving door player at the time was in fact the president of the D&D club we were a part of, and by the next session, our problematic wizard was kicked from the campaign and banned from the club. His character disintegrated back into the void from whence he came, and the campaign is still going strong 2 years later. I'm surprised that all of this occurred in one session. It sounds like an evil campaign, but one guy wanted to take things way too far. At least the group was able to quickly solve the problem, but it almost felt like he was speedrunning to get kicked out of the group. Lastly, we have a quick story about an anime waifu D&D one-shot. Let's throw a body pillow onto the fire. I have been struggling to find a D&D group after my long-term group stopped playing regularly due to scheduling conflicts. I found some people on Reddit to do a one-shot with over Discord just because I missed playing the game, but I never expected this. The setting was going to be a normal fantasy D&D module ran by a newish DM, and we began by introducing our characters. The first player began by mentioning that their character was their waifu from their favorite anime. Literally had the same name and everything, but then decided to go into great detail about the size of her chest and her revealing clothing, as well as her innocent features. And by this point, I was already planning my departure, but it got worse. The next player decided that it was important to know that even though their waifu looked like a child, they were in fact hundreds of years old. Seriously? And somehow it kept going downhill when the next player began by saying, "I'm not Korean, but..." And then he went on to say that his character was very Korean and proceeded to speak in broken English as his Korean accent. I didn't even make it to the end of that intro before I had to mention his blatant racism on my way out. I just had to tell them that this was an extremely uncomfortable experience and I got out of there. In hindsight, I should have known something was fishy when they all had anime girls as their profile pics on Discord. I really don't know what I expected, but it definitely wasn't that. I am never doing that again though. At least OP got out of there before it got worse. I kind of think it would be funny if that one shot ended up becoming an entire campaign. Anywho, what do you all think about these stories? Which one was your favorite and why? As always, be sure to let me know what you think about these situations overall.